Semifinals. This is the Field of 12 after dark / early morning college football show. George Whitfield, joined by three super talented college football quarterbacks from We Are Penn State, Christian Hackenberg, the mayor of Baylor University, Bryce Petty, and the Sooner and Aggie prodigal son, Trevor Knight. Fellas, we got here. We started the season. We talked about the five families. Two of the five families have now made it to Indianapolis, and it was 1-2, pretty much 1-2 all season. Conference mates, Alabama and Georgia. Let's start with the Bama game. Hack, we'll go to you. What was the most impressive thing or disappointing thing that you saw in this matchup with Cincinnati?
I love the way Alabama ran the football. I think just knowing Coach O'Brien and some of his thought processes, I know that they had success running the football throughout the year, but I think to do it to the level that they did last night, I don't know if they've done that all year. And that's something that I think is going to be really big for Bryce heading into this game next week, because it is tough to beat an opponent twice in the same year. And to put it all on Bryce's shoulders, kind of how he shouldered it in the SEC championship game, is going to be tough. So for him, I think it was a huge confidence boost going into this game. Tough opponent, team that got back on track defensively in Georgia, to hopefully be able to establish the run game like that again and work off that and give him some opportunities. So I think that that's one of the things that really impressed me. I mean, I kind of expected Alabama to come out and do it, but I will say this. I think Cincinnati kept it close longer than I thought they were. But ultimately, the best team won, in my opinion.
Bryce, you've been with It's a We Thing Cincinnati all year. You were the first one to come out with that 50-foot banner. What was the breaking point for them? Because Hack's right. It was 10-3 with some change left in the first half. They already went toe-to-toe with the monster, mouthpiece still in. Like, where did it start to get away from him? And what happened with Ritter?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it should have been 10-7. You know, they went right down the field on the first drive, and Alex Pierce pieced that dude up on the outside and had a touchdown. I just think, you know, defensively, you could tell what from a strategy and a point of emphasis was for that defensive unit to, if you don't get to Ritter, get your hands up. They had 6 or 7 batted balls down, and for us, especially talking on this podcast, all being accused, man, that's just momentum killers. I mean, when you can hit a 5-yard out because it gets batted down, or a stick route, or you know, like I said, a big touchdown play.
From how tall is Ritter? 6'3", 6'4", right?
Yeah.
He's got to be that, right?
Yeah.
At
we
6'3" or 4 in the ball, it sits here coming out of his hand. 6 bat down. It might have been even more than that. Half of them were lateral. You what?
And that was the thing. Yeah, I mean, it probably was more than 6. So that's just tough, man. It's tough to get momentum going. They really never got Jerome Ford going, which is kind of what, you know, Trevor and I were talking about too, even in our podcast, was he has to get going. The run game has to get going. And he had a few, you know, in the second half pop-offs, but you know, overall, you know, to Hack's point, I think they just played really well, and it just really stifled Cincinnati from getting anything going, to where you're behind on first down, you're behind on second down. It's just hard to get that defense to make plays on third and long.
Trevor, they had struggles with third and long, struggles in the red zone, and struggles trying to stop the run. 2-part question, just the same as the other two. Most impressive or disappointing part of that game, and is this a signal in an indirect way to the rest of the group of 5? Your very best representative over the last 5 or 10 years came up against one of the 5 families, and that's how it played out. Yes, competitive in the first half. Over the duration of the game, it just looked like, you know, a kind of a predictable type of outcome.
Yeah, you know, George, I think what we saw is no different than any other takeaway from what Cincinnati did. Cincinnati came in, they were competitive. They weren't competitive enough, but from the get-go, you saw a team in Alabama that, to Hack's point, they ran the ball 10 straight times and then had a little pass to score on their first touchdown. They established their dominance from the very first snap.
I agree with Trevor. They established the dominance on their very first snap. Go ahead, Trevor. I got you. Just finishing your line for you.
Yeah, it's from the very first, kept it going. It's in over 200 yards, 8 yards a carry. I mean, just big boy football versus little ball. But you look at the history of these semifinal games, and, you know, this is the margin of victory over the winning team. So you can't necessarily take everything away from Cincinnati. You just got to give a lot more props to Alabama for coming out and asserting their dominance.
It really is true. Like, we talk about the five families, and we played a bunch. I always play a bunch and call it Alabama the Roman army, because they have very few vulnerabilities. And just in wartime, historically, the Roman armies had some of the best generals in history. They don't make mistakes. They don't hurt themselves. And they are always like just charging and mowing down the opponents. It's the same with this in-game adjustments, singular effort by players. Hack, you were talking about those guys up front. Look at the edge rushers with the ends. Like they never got sealed in. Cincinnati never really had a go-to, and it was just constantly go to the bag, go to the bag, go to the bag for the Bearcats. And I can't even imagine what that must have been like, trying to call plays and trying to establish a rhythm, getting out of third down, trying to figure out how you're going to stay on the field a little bit to get the pressure off your defense. Like that was overwhelming. Are they the favorite? We're going to go into the other matchup here. Are they the favorite? Vegas has them a slight underdog, but what do we think about the Roman army here? Heck.
Yeah, it's hard. I think, you know, when you look at the course of the year, I still think that Georgia's been the most consistent football team. I was really interested to see how they were going to answer the bell, and obviously we'll get into that like you hinted at just then. But I still think Georgia's been a very, very consistent team. I think Alabama has still had some ebbs and flows throughout the year that scare me a little bit. But like I said, I think it's really hard to beat a team twice in the same season. I keep going back to that. I think that's something that's very tough to do. And unlike Cincinnati, Luke Fickell, I think Kirby is a little bit more familiar with the stage that he's stepping into as well. Having been with Saban, knows how he's going to handle business. So there's going to be a little bit of like-mindedness, I think, coming into preparation for this game and focus from a team standpoint and messaging. So, I mean, I just expect it to be a really good football game. I don't think it's going to be a rematch of the SEC championship game. I don't think it's going to be a runaway one way or the other. These teams are going to be really prepared. They both won the way I think they both wanted to. And I think it's going to be a clash of the Titans, kind of how we've talked about throughout the year. And personally, you know, just going to keep riding that Georgia wave like I have all year, and said that they're going to win the whole damn thing. So might as well go Dogs. You know what I mean?
Trev, Bryce, are you guys lining your money up with Hacks, or do you see the Roman army right now as just the untouchables?
I'll go Bryce. Yeah, I think that it's an interesting kind of precursor to this game because of what we saw in the SEC title game. To Hack's point, Georgia was the White Walkers, as we've called them on here. They're going to go up against the Roman army. I know I predicted, we might have all predicted, that Georgia was gonna win that SEC title game. Obviously, it turned out differently. Now you've got this rematch. That is the biggest thing to me, though. Beating a team twice, especially this caliber of team, is incredibly hard to do. It can be done, but I just see a Georgia team that just came out and had a really good game plan against Michigan. I thought and especially on the offensive side of the ball, that made them look elite against a good Michigan football team. So they're going to go back to the drawing board. They're going to correct mistakes, especially in that coaching staff room, implement that into their guys. Those guys will have as much confidence as anybody going to Indy. And I'm with Hack. I'm rolling.
Bryce?
Dogs on top. Dogs on top. Yeah. I don't think you can say anything else, man. It's just they're rolling right now. They stopped, and that's something about this game too, is they stopped a heavy downhill snowball in Michigan. I mean, they had a lot of momentum coming into this game that I think was kind of unspoken. They just kind of went about their business and did what they needed to do. And, Dan Lanning had these guys absolutely 100% better prepared for this game. There was more passion on the field, even on the defensive unit, on the offensive side. I mean, they gave up some interesting plays from the Michigan defense that kind of let them run away with it. But this was just a better coach team. And I think that knowing that the SEC championship had a lot more explosive plays for Alabama, I don't think Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning are going to let that happen again. And so I think it's going to be Georgia running away with it.
Oh wow! So let's we're going to swing around on that Georgia Michigan heavyweight matchup first. Let's get to our traditions. Normally we kick it off, but we wanted to get that Roman Army game out of the way first. We do a toast to our favorite thing of the football weekend, or Bryce, we also do a
toss.
A toss.
Yeah,
so if he didn't like it, or if you didn't like something, we throw it out. But thank you for joining us here on the Field of 12 college football show. Just a heads up, we're going to be at Ellison Brewing Company in Indianapolis, January 9th and 10th. We hope you guys come down and join us. We'll be down there for the national championship game. Roman Army versus the White Walkers, as Trevor alluded to. But let's go to our toast. Trevor, I'm going to go with you first. Your favorite thing from yesterday in these two heavyweight matchups?
Yeah, I'll reiterate my point with the run game. Brian Robinson Jr., you got my toast, man. 204 yards on 26 carries, 7.8 yards a rush. Just dominant. Whenever they needed the ball off, the dude was getting them not just a couple yards to put them in position on second and third down, but chunk yardage. He was a man amongst boys. So cheers to Brian Robinson Jr.
Hey.
Got that Celsius rolling this morning too.
I drank a little bit of coffee.
Hack, let's go up to you in Jersey. Your toast of the morning.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go to the Georgia Michigan game. Unit that I mentioned in my podcast with JP this week, who I was very interested to see how they were gonna show up and play, especially after the SEC championship game, because of how dominant they had been throughout the year, and they were pretty non-existent during that game against Alabama a few weeks ago, is the Georgia defensive front. I think it's been a unit that we've talked about and been a very integral part of that defense throughout the whole year. They were not there in the SEC championship game, and last night they showed up, 4 sacks, created chaos constantly in the pocket for whoever was pulling the trigger for Michigan. And I think that those guys are going to play a huge role in the game next week. So I'm giving them a little kudos, and also kind of prefacing that I hope that they keep up what they've been doing, because I think it's going to be massive to get Bryce Young uncomfortable throughout the game and hopefully limit some of those explosives. So Georgia defensive front, here's to you guys.
Hey, that's probably the most toasted unit all season, the White Walkers. Bryce Petty, sir.
Yeah, I actually love that toast, Tack. I was going to do that, but I think last second changed my mind, and kind of keeping it again with the crew on this podcast as a quarterback leading your team to an undefeated regular season and then getting an SEC championship game. Stetson Bennett coming out with a lot of noise that I think is unwarranted for what he's been able to do. So for him to come out and play a complete game like he did, 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, toast to you, kiddo. Go do it one more time and write your name in the history books.
No question. And if I can add on that, had a lot of nice plays with his feet.
Yeah,
got out of some jams. Even if he didn't take the ball downfield, got out of some jams, like stole a couple first downs. I'm cheering for him. And you know what? They announced an award I didn't even know we had in college football, and he won it.
Walk-on.
Yeah, the award for best walk-on or best college football player to start his career as a walk-on. Stetson Bennett won that last night too. I hope you keep winning, sir. Good luck to you. Lastly, before I roll mine out, we want to give a toast to the Godfather. We've done it all season long. Just the face and voice of college football, just the spirit of it. Coach Corso, Lee Corso. We're excited, sir. Hope we get a chance to see you at the national championship game. Coach, mine is prefaced by honestly saying, and this is 4 quarterbacks sitting on here, the stars of this Final Four, the majority of them are on defense. Like Michigan's 2 best players, defensive players. Look what Alabama, Cincinnati's 2 of their 3 best players were the corners, Ritter and then the linebacker. And then the White Walkers' whole unit, I thought should have been in New York. My toast is going to Alabama's Will Anderson. I just think he is the heart, soul, brain battery of that team. And when you listen to him talk, when he's talking about execution and, just telling the guys that we had to lock down Cincinnati. We knew that they couldn't give him any breath, give him no air. And he was saying midway through the second quarter, that's it. Put a flag in the ground. That's all we're giving them. And that's pretty much it. They had 3 in the second quarter, 6 for the game. And he had like 31 tackles for loss, which is the most since they started keeping track of that in the year 2000. So I'm excited to see him lead the Roman Army. Will Anderson, sir, quarterbacks to a defensive player. Toast to you, sir. Let's roll over here now to the other heavyweight matchup with Michigan and Georgia. Another kind of surprising, competitive to a point, but I was shocked. I had the winner wrong, first of all, and I thought it was going to go at least all 12 rounds. It didn't. Hack, we'll start with you. Going into Big Ten country, this was the first Big Ten team to lose this bowl season. The Big Ten's like 4-1 or 5-1, but Michigan ran into the White Walkers literally, and they went with purpose. No gadget plays. They tried to run right into the teeth of them, but they struggled. Got outgained 518 to 325. What was your biggest, observation watching the Big Ten's best versus the SEC's best?
I was a little disappointed in Michigan's overall performance. I thought that they were going to come out and with the amount of time they had to prepare, have a few more answers than they did. But ultimately, I just don't even think this game was really that close, even from the jump, George. I mean, Georgia came out. The one thing that we talked about, and Bryce, you hinted at it too, was the amount of momentum Michigan had coming into this game. And then conversely, I think Georgia also had some momentum, but it was kind of from the opposite side of the spectrum in the negative world and self-doubt world. And everybody now, you go from basically holding the number 1 spot for the latter half of the football season. You lose a game against a team you're going to play again in the national championship game, and you drop all the way to 3. I think Georgia played with more of a purpose, more of a chip on their shoulder, more of an understanding with what was at stake than Michigan did from the beginning of the game. And they I think they just flat out dominated this football game. And Stetson, I'll get it right this time. Sorry, guys. I think I've been saying it right, but Dagan and Rob were giving me a hard time about that. But I was very impressed with him. Bryce, I thought that was a great toast. I thought he came out, answered the bell, and you want to talk about a guy who had a bunch of shit thrown at him basically for 4 weeks since that championship game. Everyone's talking about JT. We did it. I'll eat crow. I'll give the kid his roses. I did it. I think he came out and played phenomenal. And ultimately, I think it was just too much for Michigan. They couldn't run the football. I think that's kind of their heart and soul as an offense. They tried to do it, couldn't do it. Like I said, I think Georgia just answered the bell. And I think this is not to discredit Michigan, though. I think this is a great experience for them. And I was listening to Aiden Hutchinson's post-game presser a little bit, and he mentioned that. He said, we got us here. And I'm not a big believer in moral victories, but I think specifically for this program and Jim Harbaugh and all the messaging that happened for him throughout his tenure there, getting there is something that's good. And now it's up to them to stay there. And I think the leaders on that team really did a great job of setting the standard for the younger guys. And I expect Michigan to be around for the next few years, at least, to continue to be a big player within this realm of college football playoff, Big Ten championships. I think that they're going to be around. I think they really did a great job of setting the standard, and that goes to a lot of the older guys on that team. So I want to give them a little bit of credit too, because it was a great year. It was a great run. But they, like you said, they just ran into what I believe is the best football team in college football. So
yeah, that what Hack is saying, Bryce, goes without. I mean, it just you got to stop and honor it. Last year, Michigan 2-4, and everybody that was wearing maize and blue has got resumes and ideas, and they got a short list of who we need to get in here to get this thing done. They buckle down. They turned 2 wins last year into 11 this year. Big Ten champs, a Heisman candidate, a top 3 defense, and they're going into the college football playoffs representing the Big Ten as a 2 seed. That is a hell of a turnaround, but also it's the White Walkers, a team that from the kickoff when we watched them against Clemson haven't changed. And Hack's right. Alabama came in, threw some early haymakers, some late haymakers, and got them out of there in the championship game. But your biggest takeaway was Michigan's ascent up into this point or Georgia's continued dominance throughout the season?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm probably going to talk out of 2 sides of my mouth here because I've always preached process. I love process, so I get what all you guys are saying about their ascent. The thing I don't like about just the mentality of even watching the O-linemen walk into the stadium with these aviators on and like.
For which team?
For Michigan. For Michigan, it was like watching like I don't know five guys in high school that thought they were too big and too cool to say hey to the freshmen. Like it was just such a weird mentality walking into that stadium that I felt like I would much rather have dip spit on their white Jumpman sweatsuits and a 12-pack walking in there like just ready to get dirty. And so I felt like they were just too cute. And then that really went into the entire game. They got absolutely dominated in the trenches to where, again, talking out of 2 sides of my mouth here on the process, at some point Harbaugh, because of it leadership, it always trickles down from the captain here. You have to be pissed off at some point to continue to be, I don't want to say under delivering because that's not what it is. Look, they did a really good job this year, but you're Michigan. You recruit nationally. You've already been to the Super Bowl before. Like this should be nothing to you, and you should be pissed off. There was a play when the corner for Georgia picked the ball off. It was 100% holding, should have been called, and Harbaugh's sitting there talking to the ref like he's talking to his wife, just like, hey, what happened there? And like Kirby Smart is sitting there dog cussing Stetson Bennett before the halftime because he wants the ball. Like there's just such a different mentality. And I'm totally fine with different coaching mentalities. But at some point you have to have a little fire. To me, I think and I'm kind of calling out a Hall of Fame coach here in Harbaugh. And so apologies here because, go ahead and bring it at me. But at some point, get pissed off for your guys. At some point, get pissed off at the fact that you keep you don't exceed expectations. And so I agree with you, Hack. I don't always like moral victories. This is a moral victory because you did have a guy go to New York. You did get to the playoff. You did have a lot of momentum, but then like, dude, you got there. So now let's go win. Like it's not good enough to get there. And I just never felt a sense of urgency from that entire sideline, even when things were going good, when things were going bad, outside of the kickoff. Like the entire energy was just deflated on that team. So I know I kind of went on a rant there, but I didn't like the way that Michigan, approached that game, even from the walk-in to, the ebbs and flows of the game. I just never felt like they cared to win.
George, let me cut in here real quick. I do agree with you, Bryce, but I think when you sit there and you look at the process, though, right? Like take the competitive, take who you are, because I know who you are fairly well, and I think you know who I am very well. And we have similar minds and process, like our brains function the same way when we have those types of things. But I think taking all that out of it and just looking at it, I think they did exceed expectations this year. I think that overall, Michigan needs to check this box as a great thing. They can be pissed off, and they should be. And I agree with you there. I think there should have been a little bit more of fire, especially in the middle of that game. You're down 14-0, and then there just wasn't a lot of like urgency and attack.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, having that mentality, especially in the trenches, which was Michigan's bread and butter really for the last half of the year, where they started getting all that momentum, is they were just beating the shit out of people physically. And they were doing it in a conference that is traditionally known for being a very physical conference. They just didn't have that. So I agree with you there that at the end of the day, the letdown was the fact that they didn't bring everything that got them there. I don't think they brought that to the table. But I think to your point about being a process guy, I think when you look at the process of it, I think this was a big win for Michigan football moving forward. Now they have to continue to prove it and continue to build off of it. But I think overall, from a process standpoint, it was a big win for the boys in blue. And I have a hard time saying that because I personally have a lot of vendetta against Michigan. I'm not a big Michigan guy, but I think it was a big win for that football program and that university.
Hack, we appreciate you, wrapping your arms around a rival like that, which you've done a lot this year. You've done a lot this year. I'll give you that. Trevor, last night I texted Coach Harbaugh. It's probably like an hour after the game, and I texted him something simple: Phase 1 complete. Phase 1 of the mission complete. And it goes to what Hack is saying. They're on their back last year, 2-4. Michigan, like even just saying the name, it's the all-time winningest program in the country, 2-4. Fist fights with Rutgers trying to get out of Jersey against Rutgers. All of a sudden now they're in the college football playoff. Hack is right. They at least have the base down. They at least have like their foundation down. It's down now. And Bryce is also right. But you're Michigan. So like the name is big, but inside we got a lot of work to do. To Bryce's other point, the getting pissed part on Harbaugh, Trevor, I felt like he was managing a mentality all season for his team. His two best players sit on opposite ends on defense. So they have good guys on offense. They don't really have a warlord out there. There was no like one pinnacle guy. The running back room's a committee. The quarterback room's a committee. The receivers, a bunch of like good guys, but they coached their ass off and got these guys there. But the lack of experience. And now watch this. The last 2 years, Michigan's biggest games last night, Ohio State and Ohio State. Georgia's playing in heavyweight matchups seemingly every weekend in the SEC. Cincinnati last year in the college football playoff, Bama in the SEC championship, Michigan in this college football. They've been there. So the mentality of the glasses and getting too cute, I doubt we see that next year with Michigan if they can battle their way back. I doubt that they put all the spoilers and chains and all that. I bet they leave a lot of that stuff off and put the chains on the tires and just get after it. And the last thing, Trevor, and it's going to you, mentality of coaches. When one of those two said it was like Harbaugh was talking to his wife with the refs. Kirby Smart, 3 different times on the sideline when they were wrapping the game up, kept warning his guys, I want no Gatorade bath. This is not a celebratory deal. This is a check-the-box game. And the last part was when he got interviewed, Kirby said, yeah, it's on to Bama. And he looks at his watch and he goes, they got a 4 or 5 hour head start on us right now. Like it was like he's setting the course, but that's also a man and a general who's had his teams in this war time. And I think you got to get like a rhythm for that. Yes, you're a Super Bowl coach, but these kids haven't been there, and the program hadn't really been there in a long time. That's a long wind up for you, Trevor, a long setup. But is mentality and experience a heavy factor in what happened last night?
Big time. You saw just from you just mentioned in Kirby Smart, you see a guy that has smelled that. They were just there in the national championship, same matchup just a few years ago. He doesn't want to make any of the mistakes they have made before. And we know those are for him personally, that locker room. But because the way that he went about this yesterday, you can tell it was just another stone on the road to the ultimate goal. Now the work starts, right? I mean, I know it's been a very long season, but now for the next several days, the work starts so that they can go out there and not walk off that field with disappointment like they felt back in 2017, I believe it was. It's time to go to work. I love the mentality behind it, the experience of where they've been, and being able to permeate that through the team is invaluable to those players. Those guys are going to be ready to go, and it will be a much different football game than the SEC title game.
Speaking of title games, we just want to let you guys know again, national championship game coming up here in a week and some change. This crew will be at the Ellison Brewing Company in Indianapolis, January 9th and 10th. Come down, bring your questions, bring your signs, bring your crew. We'll be down there. Come sit with us. We're going to be going over Roman Army, the White Walkers. Trevor Knight, you got a quick word for us from our people at Hellofresh?
Yep. We just want to thank our sponsors over at Hellofresh, America's #1 meal kit delivery service. Everyone knows that the holidays can be hectic, but Hellofresh keeps things simple with recipes that.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely does. HelloFresh keeps everything simple. It's easy. The food's incredible. There's no other choice than HelloFresh. Get your HelloFresh. Comes in the mail. You got to do very little work, very little cleanup, and it's a huge meal. Ask these guys right here, Trevor, Hack, Bryce. HelloFresh is what it is. Usually they send 3 meals in the box. I mean, it's delicious. Fellas, you guys back me on this, yes?
Yeah. Customizable, get what you want.
Yeah. They're awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so if you're not a sous chef or a 5-star chef, you will be with HelloFresh. Get in there, get HelloFresh. Probably catch them at HelloFresh on all the social medias, certainly at HelloFresh.com. HelloFresh. So as Trevor is coming back, fellas, the #1 team trending last night wasn't even playing. The whole world got up for today's Rose Bowl participant for Ohio State, making a claim, we told you so, about Cincinnati, and even some wanted to bark about Michigan, who they got knocked out by. Cincinnati certainly earned it. Do we feel any different about how the committee arrives at putting the 4 best out there? Is it going to really go by committee? I mean, is it going to go by earned resume, or is it going to go by best after watching what happened yesterday? Hack, how do you lean on that?
I just feel like this is such a tough issue to dissect. It's like that argument of who's the greatest athlete of all time. You're going to have people throw the Jim Thorpe, the Bo Jackson, you're going to have so many different people, and they're going to have so many different definitions of what that is, right? So when you're trying to dissect a football team, all of the variables that go into a football team, there's the hard stuff, the tape, watching it, seeing how they play, type of players they have, and then there's the intangible stuff, which is really hard to put a measurement to, is the intangibles and the momentum and all those things that go into preparation and ultimately playing on Saturdays. For me, it's such a hard conversation to have, because having played the game, I tend to lean more towards the eye test, just watching, and who do I feel from a matchup standpoint, from a coaching staff standpoint, experience, who can bring the best product to the field. Because I think that's ultimately, when you look at college football and the business of college football, that's what they want. They want the best products. They want these playoff, the semifinal games to be probably more competitive than they were last night. They want the national championship game to be competitive. It's going to bring viewers. It's going to bring money in. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to go into that. But to me, the solution for this is try to eliminate that as much as possible and put it between the lines. And I've been saying this all year. I think that, realistically speaking, probably the top 8 teams in the country every year, thinking back, the top 8 teams in the country every year probably have, if not all of those packages, but pieces of everything that I just mentioned to have an argument as to why they should be or have an opportunity to compete for the national championship. And then for the Cincinnatis of the world, and then like going back to when I was younger with the Boise States of the world, when they were on a tear, the last, like, whether you do 10 or 12 teams, the last 4 spots should be filled with those guys. Let them freaking keep going at it, because I think Cincinnati would match up pretty decently against a few of these other teams. Honestly, I think the Cincinnati-Ohio State game would have been a great game, based upon what I watched with Ohio State throughout the year and what they've struggled with. So I think Ohio State 100% from a matchup standpoint, from a coaching staff standpoint, players that they have, was probably one of the 4 best teams in the country. Now, they had some losses and some key losses that they shouldn't have had, probably hurt them and came back and bite them in the ass ultimately when it came to making that decision from the committee standpoint. But like I said, that's why I want to kind of take it out of the committee's hands, because it's so hard to even narrow it down. I think it's only going to get harder too with the transfer portal and the distribution of talent and kids wanting to play now. I think it's only going to get harder for these guys. So I think they need to really expand this whole thing, because I think it's just so hard for those guys to really hammer it down to say these are the 4 best teams, whether it's wins, whether it's losses, whether it's the tape, whether it's the intangibles. I don't know what the hell. There's no blueprint for that. Everyone's going to have their own opinion. So I think the only way to answer that is line them up and let them go. Let the action between the white lines talk.
Bryce, before we go to you, Trevor, thank you for the assist with Hellofresh. Trevor, when you watched yesterday, would Ohio State have been a better representation of the 4 best teams? You know, you're probably looking at Cincinnati. Or did we get it right? They were most deserved, should have been there, and we ride with however it plays out. And does that determine what happens to the next Cincinnati next year?
Yeah, I think it played out the way it was supposed to this year. To Hack's point, you don't win the Big 12 title game, you know, that's another loss. You don't necessarily deserve to be in. Do I think they're one of the 4 best teams? Yes, I do agree with Hack there. They are, but it goes back to our arguments that we had leading up to them making this final decision of what is the committee really doing to put these teams here? Of course, the way it played out, you can plug and play anybody in there. Oh, you know, Ohio State would have played Alabama a lot closer. They should have been in. You know, Ohio State would have played Georgia a lot better. They should have went in, even though they, you know, whatever your argument might be, you can make those arguments now. But it played out, I think, the way it was supposed to. That being said, it's got to expand. It's necessary. These guys have got to have more teams represented there so that there can be a Cinderella type story. But if not, you've got more of the best teams represented to go and make a run at winning the whole enchilada.
Bryce, speaking of that enchilada, will they cook this thing the same next year, given how we played it out? Or do you think on-field outcomes are going to bring in a little bit of change or influence, certainly how they start to look at this, especially if they only keep it the 4 current team format?
Yeah, I like the idea of expanding as well. But, you know, to go back to your first part, I think the 4 best teams were out there. I mean, you can talk about Ohio State jumping Cincinnati, but Cincinnati beat a Houston team that beat Auburn. Right. So in the bowl game. And so, you know, at that time, it is the eye test to Hack's point. Ohio State had their 2 losses and didn't get in. But for that same reason, I think that's why you expand. The other reason I like the expansion is because it gives guys something to play for. I'm kind of tired of seeing these guys, you know, jump ship on the bowl game. And, you know, you've got Aiden Hutchinson, who's probably the number 1 pick, you know, at least predicted. he's playing in this game. That's what you want. You want to see the top talent on these top teams that, have played the whole regular season to get to where they are, to where they can, be a potential first, top 10 draft pick. You want to see those guys play. And so I like the idea of expanding to give those guys, a reason to play in the playoffs and go get a national championship, instead of just saying, hey, I'm in the Chick-fil-A Bowl or I'm in the Cheez-It Bowl, so I'm not going to play.
I love that. Just a quick side note. If somebody out there has this answer, like, why do we call every bowl game winner the champion of that bowl if there's only 2 teams playing in the Twizzler Outback Bowl champions? Like, well, why aren't they just the victor? Like, we'll come back around. I always wondered about that. Like, damn, we got champions all around. 2 6-6 teams meet up in somebody's backyard. The winner is the champion. I digress. Hey, let's go a couple quick things here. Ohio State, Utah, probably one of the more attractive games today. And then you're also talking about Notre Dame and Oklahoma State. The game, the matchup you're looking forward to the most. Trev, let's go with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Ohio State-Utah matchup. Utah obviously saw some success out there, on the western side of the country, although we wrote off the Pac-12 from a very early point in the year. So it'll be interesting for them to go up against who all of us agree, I would imagine, is the next best team that didn't get in, right? Ohio State has an opportunity to assert their dominance. And even though it's not to go and play for the whole thing, they can come out and say, hey, I know we didn't get in this year. We had a couple hiccups, but we're still one of the best programs and best teams in college football. So I'm looking for Ohio State to come out and have not just a dominant performance, but a completely dominant performance, winning by several touchdowns. It'll be fun to watch.
Bryce, do those 2 games intrigue you? I know your boys are also locking horns today. Baylor's got a big heavyweight bout. Let's say that you're excited about Baylor, a game outside of Baylor's game that is going to draw your attention, whether you're riding through the links or you're on your couch.
Yeah, I especially because Dagan's a fan, you'll never really hear me say that I want to watch Notre Dame football, but I think that this Marcus Freeman, I just really want to see how the guys respond to him. I mean, just from that video in the locker room, I would love to see these guys come out and just, kind of play with their hair on fire for this guy and right into, next year, 2022, and hopefully a really long tenure for Marcus Freeman in an established, like, this is Notre Dame football, because I think what we've seen in the past is they beat, daisies here and there, and then they go and play somebody and they get their ass kicked. So I'm actually excited to see how those guys are going to come out with everything that happened, with Brian Kelly under a new kind of regime and take the field against the Cowboys. So,
Hack, are you rolling there with the Irish and Bryce? You got Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Mississippi State. It's like, I just feel like that's game that. Oh yeah, you're right. Ole Miss. Baylor and Ole Miss. I feel like that's a game that like Raider fans would love to watch. Or Ohio State, Utah. Which one do you think is the central game today?
Dude, it's the Penn State Arkansas game because it's going to be a doubleheader. It's going to be a doubleheader. Whoever wins today is whatever. Clint and I, we got a wrestling ring getting set up in that bar up there in Indy, and Clint and I are going at it too. So it's going to be a doubleheader.
And that wrestling ring,
banana hammocks and all.
Get that sock'em boppers out.
Weird.
I don't know if I'll hammocks, but
that wrestling ring, Matt, will be sponsored by Hellofresh at Ellison Brewing Company in Indianapolis, January 9th and 10th. Hackenberg and Penn State versus Clint and Arkansas, hammocks and all. Go ahead, Hack.
Yeah. But no, in all seriousness, I am excited actually for the Ohio State Utah game, and namely because we're gonna get to see some of these younger guys in that Ohio State locker room, and specifically their receiver room. Some future stars, some future guys are gonna make an impact. We didn't have a ton of opportunities because of Olave and Garrett Wilson, but I think one of the deepest rooms in college football in terms of talent. I think it's going to be interesting to see some rising stars, some previews for next year. And I think Trevor made some great points. This Ohio State team has a lot to be pissed off about this year. I think a lot of it, they have to look in the mirror, but I think this is a great opportunity in the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. This ain't no Cheez-It Bowl. This is the Rose Bowl.
Not that that's a bad bowl. I love Cheez-It.
Not that it's a bad bowl. I love Cheez-Its too, but this one ain't never going to change its name. There's not going to be another corporate sponsor. It's the granddaddy of them all. And I think Ryan Day is going to have a really focused team, and I expect Ohio State to come out and put on a show. I think it's going to be a precursor for CJ Stroud and his Heisman campaign next year. I think there's going to be a lot of things that can happen, and it's a great opportunity for the Buckeyes. So I'm excited to watch that one.
Let's talk about that real quick. I'm curious to get you guys' perspectives. Ohio State's 2 leading receivers, which also happen to be 2 top 5 potential picks in the draft. They're supposed to go 1-2 on the receiver board. They're opting out. You've seen that over the years. We've seen it this season. Usually the teams, certainly like Alabama, who's won 6 championships in 13 years, their players don't opt out because they want to get that ring. Teams that are in the championship game, like look how many players LSU put in there a couple years ago, and you can go on down the line. If you're in the big one, they're in. All the other ones, they usually, it seems like 50-50. Aiden Hutchinson played. I see both sides. I've watched a lot of guys that we know on air. Some of them like beat the hell out of these kids for like stepping out of the game so they can go get ready for the draft or be healthy for the draft. We watched the linebacker a couple of years ago from Notre Dame, Jalen Smith, go up against Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl, come down, nerve damage, tore everything. It affected his NFL career. I mean, that could happen at any point, but I think I see both sides. McCaffrey was the first player I've ever seen do that. Just go to Coach Shaw and say, I don't think I'm going to play in this game down. I think they're like El Paso or something. I'm going to sit this one out. Would it be smart for college football or for college football teams to implement a playoff or a bowl game bonus? Would that start to get us more buy-in? Hold on 1 second, sweetheart. Would that get us more buy-in on those games like today? Would Olave and Miller play if we had bowl game? Like you got all the sponsors showing up for this thing. Could that help? Bryce, would that help?
I mean, I don't know if you're a top 10 pick, your signing bonus is 12. So, I mean, unless that player bonus is going to be double-digit millions, I don't think it matters. You know, you giving me a 72-inch TV, thanks. But that, to the Jalen Smith, that's probably the best example you can possibly have. But, to your point also, I mean, you could twist your ankle walking off the curb to go to the truck. I mean, it's really about the player mentality and what's important to them. And, I'm kind of with you, George, even though I talked about expanding to get these guys to play. I wasn't a top 10 pick, so I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know how I'd look at going up against the Utah football team, in the Rose Bowl. I think that's a nostalgic. I mean, there's a lot of history, a lot of tradition in that bowl game. That one might be different than, again, just because we keep bringing up the Cheez-It Bowl. So I think if it is a New Year's Six, I would probably stay personally and play that to be a Rose Bowl champion. To your point, George. But I think if it's before that, then no, I'm gonna focus on the draft and that whole process, going ahead and get started there. But I do like what you're talking about, though. I think we had a player performance bonus, in the league, just to get plays. I think that's an exciting thing for guys to get. But does that mean, do you tier it? Does everybody get a player performance check to play in it? Is that only for the guys that are going to be a, first or second round guy? How do you look at that? So,
Trev, Hack, I know we got to go quick. Like we are coming down the back stretch. Bonus, how else do you incentivize these guys to play? Or like what Bryce is saying, like the outcome that you're sitting out for is always going to dwarf whatever you could put up for these guys.
I think it's a personal thing, but Bryce hit it on the head. Unless you're in that position, it's hard to make that decision. You know, me personally, the way my mind works with just going through summer workouts, developing a culture, being with the guys, going through battle all year long. In my mind, it doesn't make sense to say, guys, hey, appreciate all the work this year, but best of luck. I'm going to throw you guys to the wolves, especially if you're a quarterback or any of these guys, because they're obviously a big piece to the puzzle to go out and get a win. That being said, you got to end up doing what's best for you and for your family and for your personal situation. And if you, in your heart of heart, can say, I'm not going to pad up for the last time of my college career, one of the best periods of life that I'll ever go through, because I think that I'm a first round pick and I don't want to, risk getting a bad injury like Jalen Smith, then you got to support that for these kids. It is hard, though, to watch it happen because you're like, here we go again, right? I mean, I don't even want to watch this game anymore because it's not even going to be ones versus ones. You're going to have these guys that are going to come in, and yes, you get a precursor to the next year and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, it's way less appetizing of a game to watch. Mm-hmm. To Bryce's point, I don't think a tiny little bonus or something like that's going to get these guys over the hump when they're facing millions, here in just a few months. So I don't know if there's a good way to get around it, but it's unfortunate that it's happening more and more. And now that you're seeing these guys enter the transfer portal when they're sophomores, juniors still playing, even though they're the starter, that adds a whole nother element to it. And that's a whole nother show. It's created just a difference in college football and specifically in the bowl season.
Hack, we're going out with you. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a nice gesture in terms of the bonus to play. And I think certain bowl games could probably put a decent enough one out there to make someone jump and bite. But I think it's an impossible task. And to me, the only way to do it is to give those kids a chance to play for the whole enchilada, as Trevor says. So the only way you motivate them is by finishing the season the true champion, George. And I think that's it, man. I just think you're not going to be able to incentivize with money. That's a slippery slope. So like I said, expand it. It'll be better for everybody. You'll get more guys to buy in because it's that Charlie Mike mentality. Finish the mission, burn the ships. We're going to win the whole damn thing. So that's my take on it.
That expanding is a big deal, and they've earned it.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you're widely like a consensus top 5, you've earned it. And then, what are we playing for? Are we trying to get our 7th win over here in the Turkey Bowl, or are we lining up to go get a ring? They've earned it. Regardless, on behalf of Trevor Knight, Christian Hackenberg, Bryce Petty, Field of 12, wanted to say quarterback show, Field of 12 college football show. We will be in Ellison Brewing Company, Indianapolis, January 9th and 10th. Roman Army, the White Walkers, Alabama, Georgia. And plus we have Clinton Hat getting down and banana hammocks, all sponsored by Hellofresh, George Whitfield.
Sponsored by Manscaped.
And
yeah, exactly. It'll make it look bigger.
Happy New Year to you all. We'll see you here soon. George Whitfield, we're out.